Hi there, it's Sharon Waxman, the editor-in-chief of TheWrap, coming to you from TheWrap studio at the Sundance Film Festival. It's my pleasure to be talking to Ryan White, the director of, is it Ruth or Dr. Ruth?
Ask Dr. Ruth.
Ask Dr. Ruth. Why Dr. Ruth?
Why not Dr. Ruth? I mean, the opportunity presented itself in my life. My producer, Rafi Mamour, came to me and said, would you be interested in having dinner with Dr. Ruth? And frankly, you know, I'm a child of the 80s and 90s. I grew up with Dr. Ruth's voice in my household, but I didn't know where Dr. Ruth was today. You know, she was always known as Grandma Freud, like the little old lady with the funny accent saying the things you shouldn't say. And so when I found out that she was still going a mile a minute, and that especially when I found out her backstory, because I knew her as America's sex therapist, but I did not know the 55 years of life that she lived before she became famous. That was challenge after challenge. You know, her whole family was murdered in the Holocaust, and she went through World War II. She went through Israeli independence. So all of these challenges.
She was born in, she's from Austria?
She was born in Frankfurt.
I want to say Austria, I guess, because of Freud, I suppose, is where that came from. Okay, so she's German-born.
She's German-born, 1928. One shocking figure I figured out while making the film is that she's actually older than Anne Frank. They were both from Frankfurt, which really humanizes Anne Frank. And Dr. Ruth, will as she describes in the film, was very lucky in that she was part of the Kindertransport right before the Nazis took over, and her parents sent her on the Kindertransport to an orphanage in Switzerland. So the film tracks her entire past, which is a very painful past, of challenge after challenge, and really a survival story that led her to the path of becoming the Dr. Ruth that we all know.
So she's still working today?
While we were making the film, she published 3 books. She's publishing 3 more this year. She's teaching 2 university classes. She's still on television all the time. She has a column for Time magazine. The woman does not stop. She says, there's no such thing as retiring, there's only rewiring. So she says she will never retire. And it's actually difficult to keep up with her, even as a 37-year-old filmmaker.
What is it about her that you wanted to chronicle in particular? Because a documentary takes a lot of time. It's a big investment of your life. What do you think that she brings to the cultural conversation that you wanted to tell us?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the hook of the film is sex. Dr. Ruth is known as the leading sex therapist and has been talking about sex far before America was talking about sex in a public way, at least. And she's been on the forefront of so much of the sexual revolution, whether that's abortion. She was working for Planned Parenthood in the early 60s, well before abortion was legalized. She was on the forefront of normalizing homosexuality, at the forefront of treating the AIDS epidemic with empathy and sympathy instead of discriminatory policies. So all of these parts of the sexual revolution are kind of paced throughout the film. But the backstory of what she went through before she became Dr. Ruth is really the thread of the film. And I think the thing that I hope audiences take away most is that this is a woman who lost everything. She had to create herself. I mean, when she finally ended up in New York in the 1950s, she was a single mother who didn't speak English. And she put herself through school. She made the career herself, and she's done it with such positivity and optimism.
Well, I think that is the thing about her. So just tell us briefly, she went from Germany to Switzerland and lived in Switzerland until the 50s before coming to the States?
She lived in an orphanage in Switzerland until the war ended. And when the war ended, German Jews who survived weren't German anymore. She was never Swiss because she was just allowed to be there for 6 years. And she was sent to Palestine. And she became a sniper in the Haganah, the Israeli Defense Force. And
she became a sniper?
A 4'7" sniper. And she lived in Israel for 5 years. She went to Paris. It's almost like a Forrest Gump style story. She went to Paris, where she studied at the Sorbonne, and eventually immigrated to the U.S. in 1954, I believe, when she got a reparation check for Holocaust survivors. Took a one-way boat to the U.S., not speaking a word of English, and made a life here. So truly, it's a refugee story and an immigrant American dream story.